Hello everyone, and welcome to our story time. Today, we have a wonderful tale called Fly, Pico Fly. It's a story all about dreaming big and never giving up. Are you ready? Let's begin. Far, far away in the icy, snowy land of the North Pole lived a very special little penguin named Pico. Now most penguins loved waddling around, sliding on their bellies down icy hills, and diving deep into the frosty water to catch fish. But Pico was different. Pico loved to look up. He would spend hours watching the graceful birds soaring high above the deep blue ocean, their wings catching the wind. He'd tilt his head, his little heart filled with wonder, and whisper to himself, "Oh, how absolutely wonderful it must be to fly!" The other penguins, who were busy with their usual penguin activities, would often hear him. They'd waddle over, shake their heads, and laugh. "Silly Pico," one would quack. "Penguins don't fly," another would add. They thought his dream was the funniest thing they had ever heard. But their laughter never bothered Pico. He would just smile a gentle, secret smile and say softly, "Maybe not yet." He believed that just because something hadn't happened before, it didn't mean it was impossible. Every single morning, as the sun peeked over the icy horizon, Pico would start his special project. He carefully collected the softest feathers dropped by the seabirds and gathered light, sturdy sticks that washed ashore. With thin strands of seaweed, he would patiently tie them all together, building his very own small wings. He was like a little inventor, focused and full of hope. Once his wings were ready, he'd find a small snow hill, not too high, but just high enough. He would climb to the very top, take a deep breath, and jump. Whoosh! He would flap his little handmade wings as hard as he could, and for a moment he'd feel a little lift. But then he would gently tumble down, landing in a soft puff of snow. He never got discouraged. Instead, he would pop his head up, covered in snowflakes, and laugh every single time. "Someday," he would tell himself with a determined nod, "I'll find a way to touch the sky." Each fall was just another lesson on his journey to the clouds. One magical evening, the sky was filled with twinkling stars and the beautiful dancing colors of the northern lights. Pico was outside, gazing up at the cosmos as he always did, when a shiny shape silently crossed the sky. It wasn't a bird or a star. It was a flying machine. It gracefully landed on the ice not too far from where Pico stood. A door opened, and a kind polar explorer wrapped in a big warm coat stepped out. The explorer saw little Pico staring at the airplane, his eyes wide with complete awe and wonder. He chuckled softly, a warm sound in the crisp night air. "You like airplanes, little one?" he asked with a friendly smile. Pico, usually quite shy, nodded enthusiastically, his gaze fixed on the magnificent machine. Then he gathered all his courage and asked the one question that was always on his mind. "Can you teach me how to fly?" The man smiled kindly. "Maybe not today, but I can show you how airplanes work." That night was the most exciting night of Pico's life. He learned all about engines that roared, wings that created lift, and clouds that were made of tiny water droplets. His dream, which once felt so far away, started to feel real. It was no longer just a wish, it was becoming a plan. With the explorer's friendly guidance and newfound knowledge, Pico started a new project. He decided to build his own tiny glider. It wasn't a fancy machine. He used simple pieces of wood he found, scraps of strong cloth from the explorer's supplies, and a whole lot of hope. The other penguins who used to laugh at him were now curious. They gathered around to watch, their skepticism slowly turning into fascination. When the glider was finished, Pico climbed a small, icy cliff a little higher than his usual snow hills. He stood at the edge, spread the cloth wings of his glider, and looked down at the crowd of penguins. He shouted with all his might, This one's for every penguin who ever dreamed. And then he jumped. The wind caught the glider, and for a few truly magical seconds, Pico was flying. He soared through the air, gliding over the snow. He landed softly, his heart pounding with pure joy. He hadn't flown far, but it didn't matter. He had flown. And in that moment, he showed everyone that even a penguin could touch the sky. Years passed. Pico, the little penguin with a big dream, grew up. He never once gave up on his passion for flight. He became a dedicated student, learning everything he could from the explorer and from books he was given. He studied machines, weather patterns, and the principles of aerodynamics. His little corner of the ice was filled with charts, diagrams, and small models. His dream grew with him, becoming more sophisticated and more achievable with each passing day. Then, one bright, clear morning, the moment he had worked for his entire life finally arrived. A grown-up Pico stood proudly beside a real, small, vibrant orange airplane. It shone brilliantly against the white snow. He took a long, deep breath, a smile spreading across his face. He looked at the sky, then at the machine, and whispered to himself, "I'm ready." He climbed into the cockpit, his heart a mixture of excitement and calm confidence. The engine roared to life, a powerful sound that echoed across the Arctic. Snow swirled around the plane as it sped down the icy runway, and then it lifted. The little orange plane rose higher and higher, soaring gracefully above the icy world below. Down on the ground, all the penguins, his friends, his family, waved their flippers and cheered as loud as they could. "Fly, Pico, fly!" they shouted, their voices filled with pride and joy. And so Pico became the first penguin pilot. Now he flies across the vast white sky every single day. He performs loops and dives, painting patterns against the blue canvas above. He always makes sure to fly over his home, waving a wing to his friends on the ground below. He loves to visit the young penguins, telling them his story. "Dream big," he says, "even if others laugh. Don't be afraid to be different. Because every great journey, no matter how impossible it seems, begins with one brave flap." And sometimes, when the day ends and the sky turns a beautiful soft pink with the sunset, if you listen very, very carefully, you can almost hear a cheerful voice carried on the wind high above the clouds, joyfully saying, "Fly, Pico, fly!" Just like Pico, always believe in your dreams, no matter how big they are. Thank you so much for joining our story time today. If you enjoyed Pico's adventure, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.